It can seem paradoxical to place military use of AI under the label AI for good. Because, military activity is about causing destruction, okay? Compelling the adversary to adhere to one's will. It's never a pretty sight. On the other hand, if we think that there's such a thing as legitimate defense, and if AI can have a role in that legitimate defense, then we could start thinking in terms of AI for good in this domain. Now, of course, a good legitimate defense is one that is used for the right, the right ends, and is limited. Limited in the sense that it does not cause excessive damage, does not promote unwanted escalation, and preserves civilians from harm. All right, now, if we look at the current scene, the search to regulate the use of AI in the military domain is mainly happening according to two streams. And now I'm really simplifying. Basically, one stream is in Geneva at the called the CCW, the Convention on Certain Conventional Weapons. The other stream is in New York, the General Assembly. So just a few words now about what's happening and has happened in Geneva. I too was at the session in September. Pretty much the Geneva process was launched, was prepared by a report written by Christoph Haynes, who is the UN Special Rapporteur on Human Rights and extrajudicial killings and so forth. And he wrote a very influential paper in 2012, which basically warned against the dangers of autonomy in weapon systems. He spoke about lethal autonomous robots. And Haynes warned of the grave dangers of putting decision authority into the hands of machines and how this could happen at progressively higher levels of decision making, from tactical field decisions to large-scale strategic decisions. And he spoke of the grave risk of loss of human control, with real focus on losing control. And his focus was mainly on the protection of civilians, not directly the laws of armed conflict, right? And it was this worry that autonomous systems would be used by pernicious governments against their own citizens. Anyway, regardless, the ideas that he launched led to the inception of a process at the UN in Geneva under the framework I've already mentioned, Convention of Certain Conventional Weapons, group of governmental experts. And this body in Geneva was originally formed to deal with the question of blinding lasers, and eventually led to the prohibition of blinding lasers. But this turned out to be a Pyrrhic victory, because the battlefield of such weapons proved to be minimal. And I'm reminded of something my professor of moral theology once said. He said, what was the only church condemnation that was universally observed across the world? Well, it was the prohibition of the crossbow, because soon after that prohibition was emitted, firearms were invented. Okay, so there have been meetings in Geneva since 2014 towards a legally binding instrument on autonomous weapons. Autonomy is defined in relation to three terms: identify, select, and engage. All three can be automated. And should a human being be in the loop at all three moments? The focus in Geneva has principally been on select and engage, which is the final moment especially in select and engage, final moment of the targeting cycle. Lately identifies also been the subject of more discussion. It's really the moment of pulling the trigger. Can we let a machine pull the trigger? Would it run counter to human dignity? Well, for such a decision be made by the machine. So there have been 10 years of discussion around this question, and a conclusion towards a binding instrument is not yet in sight. And really, there are two limitations to the Geneva process, two main limitations. First of all, the discussions are meant to be technologically neutral, meaning that no specific technology should be considered within the proceeding. So as a colleague from the Norwegian Foreign Ministry put it, he said, everyone thinks AI, but no one says it. Because, well, you can't, because that's not part of the framework. Instead, autonomy is the operative concept. But when autonomy is removed from specific technological systems, as governed, for instance, possibly by one or another form of machine learning, it follows that the consideration of autonomy is taken outside of concrete engineering systems and taken outside of the language of engineering. The unit of analysis is something that lawyers and philosophers engage with, but which can feel very alien to the world of engineering. So for instance, in these proceedings, and it began with Christoph Haynes, autonomy and control are presented as opposites, right? So what the suggestion is, the more autonomous a system is, the less control you potentially have over it. But if you speak with someone in the field of control engineering, which is, developed as a discipline, over the last 200 years, they find this way of talking really strange. Because the whole point is to design a system that can operate under circumstances without direct human intervention for settings like missions to outer space where you can't have real-time communication link. Okay, the whole point is to develop the system where that control is exercised, but without the need for direct, continuous intervention. So that's one limitation. The second limitation of the Geneva discussions is that it's purely forward-looking, right? And it's called the search for a binding instrument on emerging weapons. And this was really important to the Russians, and I think the French. They don't want to talk about stuff that we have now, right? So what's going to happen out there? What might happen? And the reality is, we've had autonomous systems operative since the late 70s. It's really not a new thing. And oddly enough, until Haynes wrote his report, these autonomous systems, they would be called automated, like the Aegis battlefield system. They kind of flew under the ethical radar. No one raised questions about them. And they do raise real questions. Now we have, sophisticated air defense systems. Okay, so again, this removed the Geneva proceedings from the world reality, because you can't talk about stuff that we have now, which is you would think would be the main consideration, because we don't really know what's going to happen in the future. So you might end up banning something that's going to turn out to be uninteresting from a military point of view, inapplicable. All right, so that's the Geneva proceedings. I don't want to be too negative because, oh God, my time's up. I thought it was my wife calling, but no, my time's up. Anyway, so I'll just, another minute. Can I take another minute? Oh, okay. Well, then I should get extra time for doing your job. So, yeah, I don't want to be, because the, the, the group in Geneva, most of them have been together for the 10 years. The Russian, the lead American. And so, and they've made real progress on key conceptual points. So it's really valuable for that. And it's a fantastic confidence building measure, because I was really struck by the collegiality in the room. So that's all good. Okay. The other process now is taking place at the General Assembly, which started off with a call by the Secretary General to finally ban autonomous systems that function without human control. But then it muted over, I'm not quite sure how it happened. It muted into a different process to consider the broader ethical dimensions of the use of AI in military systems. So not just to focus on the final moment of engagement, but everything that comes before, including target identification, the way the systems are designed, the role of procurement, and whether relevant ethical considerations arise there. So I see this as a very promising direction, because it is better anchored in, well, reality. And you can talk about things that are happening now. Okay, I had more to say about my research project, which moves in this direction at Brio, but I'll save that for later. Thanks.